if Donald Trump loses in November, Israel is screwed. That general sentiment has been expressed quite a bit in recent months and more as the war goes on, not least by President Trump himself. And I think the people making the best case for that being true are President Biden and Vice President and Democratic probably nominee Kamala Harris. Because they are definitely not, Israel is definitely screwed with them in office. But how unscrewed is it if Trump becomes president is what we're going to try to figure out today. We're going to look a bit into some of Trump's recent comments and generally his sentiment. Is he, being not as bad as Biden and Harris on Israel does not make you pro-Israel. There's a distance between those two. Um,
Yeah.
and so where is he on that spectrum? And is he wherever he is on that spectrum, is he there right now and kind of permanently? Is he going to shift with the wind or with whatever latest thing may have annoyed him by Netanyahu or just some random Jewish person? We will uh, we'll try to figure that out today. Welcome to the Daily Objective. I'm joined by James Valliant. James, is Trump Israel's BFF?
Well, the truth is that when he was president, he did many things that I thought were positive for Israel. He recognized the Golan Heights as a real part of, forever part of Israel. I love that. He recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. I love that. He went after Iranian bad guys directly, killing Soleimani. That I think maybe is the reason why I like him the most on it. But that does not necessarily. And so I think let me, to be fair, I think you're right. Trump would be a better friend to Israel. But do you expect him to do what we call for? No, he's not going to call for a regime change in Iran. No, he's willing to negotiate anything with anybody, and he's a pragmatist and an emotionalist. And so it's really hard to predict, as you point out, what he would do. His recent comments, though, on Jews are rather disturbing. This quote here bothered me. If you love Israel, or if you're Jewish, because a lot of Jewish people do not like Israel, and they happen to be in New York, you know that. But if you are Jewish, regardless of Israel, if you're Jewish, if you vote for a Democrat, you're a fool, an absolute fool. So what he's saying there is that it really has nothing to do with Israel policy. Jews as a collective group are fools if they should not agree with him on, any random political issue, apparently. Apparently voting for Democrats, irrespective of their position on Israel, makes you a fool if you're Jewish. That is rank racism. Now, I have to say that this kind of rank tribalism and emotionalism, this racism, has increasingly prevalent in politics. Listen to his comment about Kamala Harris. When did she start identifying as black, for example? Trump says the most disturbingly racist things that, he deserves every bit of the criticism for saying these things that he gets, frankly. Now, of course, it's on both sides. The current President Biden said, you ain't, to Charlemagne, the God, you ain't black if you vote for a Republican. So there's this increasing racist tribalism on both sides that is shocking, disturbing. I've not seen it in American politics, at least this overtly and in such an ugly fashion in my entire life. Maybe it was always there, subsurface, and this has just recently liberated that kind of political racism. But this is rank political racism, Razi. It's
Um,
disgusting.
I don't remember if I told you this, but right after the debate between Trump and Biden, I made it an unusual unusual mistake for me in betting. I put a bet on Gavin Newsom to be the Democratic nominee. I thought there's no way they'll keep Biden after that performance because the Democrats, they're a much better oiled political machine than the Republicans. They know how to get rid of a bad candidate when necessary. but my immediate thought, which I think moments later, I thought, why the hell did I say Gavin Newsom? And the reason I put it on Gavin Newsom is because I thought he seems more presidential, seems he's despicable. Don't get me wrong. I know who Gavin Newsom is. He's despicable on an individual level. He's despicable as a politician, but he is probably going to be, I was thinking, less difficult to sell than Kamala Harris. And then a few minutes later, I was thinking, hang on a second, if there is actually a race, which apparently we see that there isn't, between Kamala and Gavin Newsom, especially if it's a short race, and it would be a very short race from when Biden steps down. We're not going to hear, okay, here are the reasons from the Kamala Harris side. We're not going to hear, here are the reasons why, the policies that would be better if she was president than Gavin Newsom, or here's why she's more qualified, or any of that. We would hear, are we really going to choose another white man over a black woman in 2024? And that would be the end of it because Gavin Newsom would have no answer to that. So that never happened. And actually, we don't hear that much of it from the Democrats, but we did hear from Trump. Is she black? Is she Indian? Who cares what she is? How is that relevant to your claim that you would make a better president than her? And so looking at that and looking at, look, Jews, 20% voted Republicans in the past, and I brought it up to 25, but it's still not enough. And then it was 26. Um, I'm wondering if this is gonna be a part of what he thinks about when he thinks about policy. Again, if he thinks, okay, Jews, this is something, by the way, that anti-Semites love to say about Jews in America and elsewhere. They're not loyal to the country, they're loyal to Israel. He expects them to be loyal to Israel in their vote for him over the Democrats. And is this going to be something he considers and factors into his policies? Look, I would be on Israel's side, but the Jews voted Democrat, so why should I be on Israel's side? Is that a possibility?
Well, he takes things so personally, and he is so, I mean, I hate to use the word, but he is in a sense a classic narcissist. Me, 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 me. So if Netanyahu congratulates Biden on winning the race, when Trump is still, hey, I'm the real winner, he's it personally against Netanyahu, like Netanyahu as a person. So yeah, these things affect him. These things affect his decision making. If you say negative, now the funny thing is he's the biggest name caller in the Republican Party. He'll have his pet slander name, whoever it is, I and Ted Cruz, Sleepy Joe Biden. He's always got his little defamatory personal dig in there. And then when someone ever attacks him personally, boy, does he take it personally. He can dish it out, but he really can't take it. He's the super thin, sensitive kind of guy. So you've got to wonder. I think that he would be, even with all that, the personal animosity, and that might interfere with his judgment. Honestly, I still think that the way he is pragmatically appealing to Christian voters who support Israel, I think that is probably the fundamental demographic that he'd be responding to. But I don't trust VP pick JD Vance at all on the topic of Israel at all. He talk about another tribalist, emotionalist, a collectivist mentality. Ayn Rand, the year I was born, said it so eloquently in 1963. Racism is the lowest form of collectivism, and yet that is exactly the form of collectivism that we're hearing more and more leading political candidate in the United States. Will Kamala Harris be worse than Biden even? Probably on the question of Israel. She doesn't have Biden's 35 years of at least nominal support for Israel. She didn't, it's not like she, a quarter century in the Senate consistently voting to give arms to Israel and to support Israel like Joe Biden did. But if this is Joe Biden as president, calling for a ceasefire. You could just imagine what a nightmare Kamala Harris would be when it comes to Israel. She would be on Iran's side, unequivocally pro-Iran. She would be protecting the Islamic Republic of Iran at every opportunity. She would be Obama and Biden on steroids when it comes to the Middle East. That terrifies me. That terrifies me. On the other hand, Donald Trump is a total racist. He does take things personally. If Bibi Netanyahu says something that he doesn't like, he'll hold it against him. So when emotions are in charge, Razi, it becomes very, very difficult to predict politicians. And this is emotionalist, tribalist racism.
Yeah, you mentioned Trump as better as he is than the Democrats when it comes to Israel. He's not calling for regime change in Iran. Of course, neither are the Democrats. They're not calling for regime change in among the Palestinians, in Qatar, in any country. The only country that Chuck Schumer called for regime change in, and Biden said he agreed with him, was Israel, where the prime minister is actually elected. But yeah, they wanted regime change there, so it kind of, again, the Democrats are telling us very clearly where they are. The scary thing is Trump isn't telling us very clearly where he is, and so yeah, there's a reason to be afraid. There would be less reason to be afraid if race. I always when I say that name, if Race Jacobson's super chat comment. Thank you for the super chat. It was actually the case. Race says, Valiant Leibowitz 2024, a racism-free government. Using his name. Yeah. Yeah, I would vote for that, even though I'm not a citizen. But yeah. And
I think
if they decide to run, those $2 are going to be
I deeply appreciate the compliment, but in the atmosphere, I'm not. I could be elected assistant catcher for San Diego. So,
And Gigi, thank you for the very nice comment. Gigi says, this channel is one of the few places on the internet that will analyze Trump honestly instead of the knee-jerk black and white thinking reactions, i.e. Biden is bad, therefore Trump is good. Yeah, thanks for that. And yeah, we do acknowledge that everybody is bad. And again, if anybody is good, they're unelectable, really unelectable. Yeah, your point about the vice presidential pick, I typically you have somebody as the nominee who's either more moderate, and then they might pick a less moderate, so-called moderate vice president, or vice versa. Bush was kind of Bush the second, W, was kind of in the center, maybe a bit to the left of the Republican Party on many issues, and he picked Dick Cheney, who was a bit, I would say better back then, at least. So you have stuff like that, and Trump didn't do that. Trump went full Trump with he went more Trump than Trump with his vice
that's right.
presidential pick.
His younger doppelganger is really what he picked. Someone who really does reflect his unprincipled opposition to the founding ideas of America, which Vance expressed so eloquently, how America is a group of people, not an idea, not an abstraction. And that tells you just what little connection Vance and Trump have to America's founding ideals, or in fact, any ideology, whatever. Apart from their tribalist ideology, their emotionalist ideology. But Vance has been consistently saying since October 7th, no escalation, no escalate. We don't want to escalate with Iran. He says that much more frequently than he says anything else. So I'm not sure, given the pick of Vance, he actually puts a little doubt in my mind about being on the side of Trump. Of course, is Jewish.
So
Jewish.
James, we lost you there for a few seconds. Do you want to repeat the last few seconds?
Trump's son-in-law is Jewish. His daughter converted to Judaism. Some of his grandchildren are Jewish. And that's what makes his anti-Semitic, and that's the only way you can look at it, anti-Semitic comment about Jewish voters in America so disgusting. It just adds to the despicable nature of it, frankly. He has, like me, he has Jewish family members, and he can allow that kind of anti-Semitic crap to come out of his mouth. No, I can't trust Vance or Trump on Israel, even though I think they'd be better than Kamala Harris, all things considered, on the question of Israel. But it would be a very limited kind of thing. Trump would still be wanting deals. He would not take out the regime in Iran, which is what needs to happen. So we're picking between, evil light or evil heavy, really, between Trump and Kamala Harris.
Yeah, and sometimes when I hear this super collectivist, bigoted comments from Trump, I always think I don't think he's an ideological, he's no, Nick Fuentes. He's not an ideological racist. He's just, he just runs with it because it seems like it makes sense and it might get him votes. But yeah, with the more serious America First crowd, which Vance, as far as I can tell, seems to be, again, further out there. You do have people on that side like Candace Owens, like what's his name? Bow tie guy. Uh, what's his name?
Tucker Carlson?
Yes, who was at the convention.
Next to Vance the whole time for multiple nights at the convention, buddies right next to him. So I think that tells you, and of course he gave that religious speech at the Tucker Carlson gave a total endorsement Trump and Vance, and he's very much. If you want to know what Vance is like, listen to Tucker Carlson. I think that those two guys are ideologically kindred. Yes,
Yeah.
populist, aggressively collectivist, aggressively Christian nationalist, and that's what frightens me.
Yeah, now going back to the alternative, because everything we say about Trump and Vance makes you really want to vote for the other side, until you start thinking about who the other side is and what they're saying. And so I'm not following too closely the question of who's going to be Kamala's vice presidential pick, because I'm not interested until it actually comes out. But I do see stuff about, is it going to be Shapiro? Is it should we have him to help bring back some of that Jewish vote that was lost? Is it a problem to have a Jew there because we're going to lose all the people in Michigan who are just not going to show up? And
That's this is the disgusting level in which American politics has come to. One of the best Democrats is the governor of Pennsylvania. He takes a very good, for Democrat, position on Israel. He's Jewish. So of course, we can't pick him, that's within the Democratic circle now. Can we pick a Jewish governor, even though he comes with Pennsylvania, a must-win state for Kamala Harris? They still are saying, well, of course, that'll offend the Muslims in Michigan and Minnesota, which we also need to win. It is absolutely disgusting how tribalistic these considerations are. And the Democrats hearing some, again, overtly anti-Semitic remarks about one of the better Democrat governors, Shapiro, who would be one of her better picks, frankly, both strategically and ideologically as Democrats go. But now he's unacceptable to certain Democrats simply because he's Jewish and pro-Israel. Unbelievable. I mean, that is the level of ugly tribalism that American politics is tending to.
Yeah, and that is, of course, a motivation for many people to ask the question that Best Monster asks in the chat. No, actually, Best Monster asks a different question, which I will get to in a second. But there was a question. Who asked this? Somebody asked, is RFK better? And the answer, of course, is absolutely not. But on Israel, at least some of the statements I've heard, he's better than the other two, but he is a conspiracy nut job. I mean, he's a leftist, as left as you can go. He is to the left of Kamala on almost everything, and that's not easy to be. So no.
When you listen to him about vaccines and science, that's enough you need to hear. This man is a conspiracy nut. His brain isn't functioning sometimes, you think, when it makes certain statements about science and vaccines and so forth. But you're right, when you compare statements about Israel, let's just isolate. I think RFK would be the worst in one sense. Oh, I mean, Kamala Harris did say that she would end the filibuster to pass the Green New Deal so that we could get, in effect, environmental totalitarianism. He is like that. He is an unreformed, let's put it this way, an unreformed Kamala Harris who's updating her image on that sort of thing. But leaving all that aside, when it comes to statements about Israel, yeah, probably sounds the best. But, I think, again, that has to do with one's tribal affiliations. He goes, like Biden, he is a long time, back in the 60s and 70s. If you weren't pro-Israel in American politics, you weren't cool. And a lot of that is just the afterglow, I think, of the Kennedy glow that he's trying to glom onto. So I don't trust him, even when he says pro-Israel. You're right. One of his better issues is Israel, at least in terms of what he says. But I still don't trust him. No, and I could never vote for someone that far green. No.
Okay, so back to Trump and the Jews or Trump and Israel. I mean, we always need to remind people when we talk about Trump's approach to Israel. First of all, you mentioned, and absolutely this is true, Trump moved the embassy to Jerusalem after every president that I can remember promised to do so. That was a very good move. Even more important was his recognition that the Golan Heights is part of Israel. After the slaughter of the 12 kids in Majd al-Shams, I kept seeing people on Twitter saying it's not Israel. And of course, the more moderate, the journalists like the BBC in their headline said it's Israeli occupied Golan Heights. These are really people who think Assad doesn't have enough people to oppress and slaughter, and they want the people of the Golan Heights to be included in that. So that was a very good policy, but we have to remember, the other side. And yeah, the fact that Trump gets upset about things that, should not dictate policy, like the fact that Netanyahu did what leaders do after elections, which is call to congratulate the winner of that election. Trump still denies that he lost it, but he did. And he was upset about that. And he was upset about that to the point that his first comments days after October 7th were critical of Netanyahu and of Israel at a time where you would think criticism is valid, but is not the first thing when you think about October 7th. The first thing you think of is maybe talk about, how the Palestinian people have showed us who they are, and how we should approach it, and maybe say, I also was wrong. Maybe peace shouldn't always be achieved by deal making, and sometimes there are people who should be defeated in the interest of long-term peace.
You remember what my attitude was in the wake of October 7th. I am critical of Mr. Netanyahu, very critical of Mr. Netanyahu. And before October 7th, on this channel, we were repeatedly critical of Mr. Netanyahu when we got a chance. But in the immediate aftermath of October 7th, that was not the moment to criticize the government of Israel, was it? And I was hesitant to repeat my previous criticisms of Netanyahu. Now, after a few weeks, that loosened up, and I started being critical of the Israeli government because of what they weren't doing in the wake of October 7th. Then I could be really upset. But think of that psychologically. October 7th, the atrocities happen, the murder of children in front of their parents, rapes, dismemberments, mutilations of bodies, the taking of hostages. And what's Trump's first thought? This Netanyahu guy offended me. Wow. Wow.
Yeah, I remember I wanted to do a show, and I think we did a show at some point about Netanyahu early on after October 7th, and you were not unhappy with that. I don't remember if you were on, but we definitely, we disagreed on that. But also, the first things we did after October 7th, first of all, we did a show on October 7th while this was going on, was to talk about what happened, talk about the lessons that we can learn from it about the Palestinians, because this was the Palestinians doing, and these are people that we are told, we should have peace with. We should beg for peace. We should offer them stuff in exchange for peace, which Israel has been doing for decades. And October 7th was the culmination of that. So yeah, your first reaction to October 7th is to criticize the victims of the slaughter. That's not a good sign.
Not cool. not cool. And it shows you exactly what kind of ego issues Trump has. I mean, desperately empty of a self. You wouldn't need a cognitive behavioral psychologist to figure this out. You don't need a PhD in either ethics or psychology to know what's going on with this kind of ego-sensitive guy. He is so bereft of actual self-esteem that of course, it is a matter of popularity, collective reaction, how you offend me personally. That's how he looks at this world. He looks at this world as if it needs him because of his ability to have personal good friendships with dictators, mind you. Oh, he respects me, I respect him, we're buddies, dot, dot, dot. That tells you everything you need to know. He is the leader of the cult of personality of Trump. If Trump is a cult of personality, he is the Pope. He's the Pontifex Maximus of his own cult of personality. That is disturbing in itself.
Yeah, Hannah says in the chat, Trump did say that he wants to let Israel defeat Hamas. Trump is better for Israel, hands down. Yeah, but look, again, he's saying things. We know that Trump says things and then sometimes changes his mind within a day or two. I mean, before the I think it was before the 2016 elections, he said within a day or two, he said we'd be neutral on the Israel-Palestinian issue, and then he changed it to, of course, we're pro-Israel. So yeah, maybe he does, and he's said that he sometimes says things at rallies to see what reaction he gets, and if it's a good one, it becomes policy, and that's how he came up with the wall idea, which is stupid in every way imaginable. So yeah, there was the moment in the debate with Biden where Biden was expressing support for Israel, and of course then added, the only thing I wouldn't send them is 2-ton bombs because they're not effective in urban warfare, which of course is complete bullshit because alerting the population of your existence and your willingness to defend yourself even at the if the cost is their lives is good in urban warfare. But yeah, Trump he said something like Biden said, Hamas are the only ones who don't want this to end. And Trump's response was great. He said, no, Israel doesn't want this to end until they win, or something like that, which is good. If he actually understands that and he were actually to encourage Israel to do what was right, that would be great. There are still concerns about Trump's policies elsewhere, which we, of course, will talk about a lot as the election
If, if some
nears.
Israeli action happens in Lebanon, if some Israeli action happens against the Houthis or in Syria, where do you think Trump would be if he's in the middle of some sensitive negotiation with some Islamic state that he wants to get on board with his peace deal? I don't trust him that way at all. Would he be better, I think, than Harris on Israel? Probably. The statements he's made and his past history, I think, indicate that. On the other hand, he is by no means a trustworthy friend of Israel at all. If you are on the wrong side of some negotiation that he's trying to pull off with some Muslim monster, he would tell Israel to back off, not attack Lebanon, not attack the Houthis, not defend yourself if stuff comes in from Syria. I can just hear it now. I can just hear it now.
Well, whoever wins, I think they will probably be better on Israel than the media. And one indication for that is some of the headlines and beyond the headlines, what we saw after Ismail Haniya was sent to meet his 72 virgins. That will be the topic of today's episode of the reality show. I believe tomorrow on the Daily Objective, although this is not 100% confirmed, we'll have Mark Pellegrino and we'll talk about Dave Smith. He's a famous libertarian comedian. I'm going to need to do my research, but I will. But for now, thanks, James. Thanks, everybody, for watching. And we'll see you in a couple of minutes on the reality show.